Weddings are supposed to be sacred, the joining of two hearts, a celebration of trust, love, and forever. But what happens when that trust is shattered at the altar? What happens when the veil lifts, not just from the bride's face, but from the lies that have been hiding underneath it all? She walked down the aisle with dreams in her eyes, and walked away from her wedding with a corpse in the river, a sister in the morgue, and a husband in cuffs. This isn't just a story of infidelity. It's a chilling tale of betrayal, murder, and the darkest kind of love triangle. And it all unraveled before the cake was even cut. This is Vic's True Crime Stories. Amelia had always been the type of woman people found easy to love. Soft-spoken, sincere, the kind who remembered birthdays, never forgot to say thank you, and carried a quiet sort of grace that drew people in without even trying. She was 28, a dedicated schoolteacher, adored by her students and respected by the other teachers at Fairmont Elementary. She believed in handwritten notes, second chances, and fairy tales, especially the kind that ended in long veils and soft vows. So when Jordan proposed under a canopy of string lights and scattered rose petals, it felt, to her, like life was finally delivering on its promises. Jordan was every bit the dream. At least, that's how people described him. 32, with a sharp mind and a well-tailored suit, he had built a name for himself as an architect with vision. Clean lines, glass walls, and big plans. He carried himself with a confidence that didn't shout, but hummed just loud enough to command attention. To the outside world, he was devoted, affectionate, and proud to be seen with Amelia. To her, he was home. The kind of home where you could leave your heart unlocked, trusting it would always be safe. And then there was Bella, Amelia's younger sister. 25, effervescent, radiant in that effortless way that made people forget what they were saying mid-sentence. She had always been the spark to Amelia's calm, the laughter at family dinners, the golden child who somehow always landed on her feet. The bond between the sisters ran deep, forged through years of shared secrets, sleepovers, and the kind of unconditional love that only siblings understand. Bella was the maid of honor, the emotional anchor, the one who had been by Amelia's side through every dress fitting, every flower arrangement, every happy tear. The wedding took place in Charleston, South Carolina, an outdoor venue wrapped in soft ivy, warm candlelight, and the smell of gardenias drifting through the air. It was picturesque in a way that made guests pause to take photos not just of the couple, but of the scenery, the ambience, the kind of love that appeared to bloom in every corner. Amelia had chosen this place with care. It was everything she'd ever dreamed of, romantic, quiet, a little timeless. The kind of setting that made forever feel tangible. Guests whispered that it was one of the most beautiful weddings they had ever attended. That the bride looked radiant, the groom couldn't take his eyes off her, and the air felt thick with love. But if you listened closely, really closely, you might have caught something else. A half-finished sentence between bridesmaids. A best man's toast that ended too abruptly. A glance exchanged between Jordan and Bella, quickly looked away from. No one said it out loud, not yet, but there was something in the air that didn't quite belong. At the rehearsal dinner the night before, someone had made a joke, a throwaway comment about how close the groom and the maid of honor seemed. There was laughter, of course. Nervous, dismissive, like swatting away a fly. But Amelia had noticed it. She remembered how Jordan had pulled Bella aside earlier, just for a moment, just long enough for her stomach to turn without knowing why. Still, love has a way of covering doubts in lace and sugar. Amelia smiled, clutched her bouquet, and told herself she was imagining things. Because how could something be wrong when everything looked so right? The truth, though, doesn't care about appearances. It doesn't wait for the last dance. It has its own timing. And on that beautiful day in Charleston, the truth was already making its way to the surface, one quiet whisper at a time. A few months before the wedding, things started to shift, but not in a way that shouted for attention. It was quieter than that. Quieter and slower. The kind of shift you feel more than you see. The kind that sneaks up on you while you're busy planning a future, folding love letters into guest lists and seating charts. Amelia began to notice small changes in Jordan. He wasn't colder, not exactly. Just absent. There were moments when he'd stare at his phone, smile to himself, and then lock it with a quick flick of his thumb. He started stepping outside to take calls he used to answer in the same room. If she asked who it was, he'd shrug and say work. And maybe it was. But maybe it wasn't. He didn't stop loving her, or at least, he didn't stop saying he did. But there was a new kind of distance in his affection. He still kissed her goodbye in the mornings, still helped pick colors for the wedding palette, still showed up to cake tastings and meetings with the planner. But his eyes wandered more. His mind wandered more. And sometimes, so did his evenings. Bella changed too. The bubbly, carefree sister who never missed a call suddenly started letting Amelia's messages sit unread for hours. She skipped their weekly brunch without warning. When they did talk, she seemed distracted, like her thoughts were always half a step ahead of the conversation. Then came the cancelled bachelorette weekend. It was supposed to be 3 days of sun, champagne, and sisterhood. Amelia had planned it down to the last silly matching t-shirt. But Bella backed out the night before. Said she was sick. Stomach bug. Nothing serious. Just couldn't make it. Amelia tried to hide her disappointment. She wanted to believe it was just bad timing. But the cracks were beginning to show. Her friends noticed first. They didn't say it outright. Just small things, tossed into conversation like pebbles into a pond. One of them mentioned seeing Jordan and Bella at a coffee shop together. Just the two of them. Another said she thought it was strange how Jordan always seemed to know where Bella was, even when Amelia didn't. And then there was the night Jordan came to pick Amelia up from her dress fitting. Bella was there too, chatting with him in the lobby. Their laughter stopped the moment Amelia walked in. They didn't flinch. They didn't jump away from each other. But there was something in the air that didn't feel right. Still, Amelia said nothing. She reminded herself that Jordan was her fiancé. Bella was her sister. These were the people she trusted most. The idea that anything could be wrong between them felt like an insult to her own judgment. So she tucked the discomfort away and tried to shake it off like a bad dream. Then came the dinner. Just a small family gathering. Amelia, Jordan, Bella, their parents, and a few relatives. The mood was light at first, stories and toasts, clinking glasses and wedding talk. Until someone jokingly questioned Jordan's choice to invite so few of his friends to the wedding. He brushed it off, but Bella jumped in to defend him. A little too quickly. A little too forcefully. She went on for longer than anyone expected, explaining his reasons, justifying his decisions, and shutting down any light teasing as if it were an attack. The room quieted. Amelia looked at her sister, then at Jordan, and something in her chest flickered. Not pain. Not yet. But something close to confusion. A question forming in a place she didn't want to name. Even then, she still didn't speak up. She smiled through dessert, kissed Jordan goodnight, hugged Bella at the door, and told herself again, people are just tired, planning a wedding is stressful, everyone's just on edge. Because it's easier to believe in a fairy tale when you've already ordered the dress. Easier to protect the story you've built than to risk watching it fall apart. But the truth doesn't care about your timelines. It doesn't ask if you're ready. It just waits, quietly, until it decides it's time. The sun hung high and golden, as if the sky itself had been invited. The garden was draped in soft whites and gentle blush tones. Petals lined the aisle like poetry scattered by hand. Guests settled into their seats with warm smiles and handkerchiefs folded neatly on laps. It was a scene Amelia had rehearsed in her dreams. Her favorite season, her favorite people, her favorite man waiting at the end of the aisle. Jordan stood tall in his tailored suit, every inch of him picture perfect. When Amelia appeared, glowing in satin and grace, the world seemed to pause. There were gasps, then applause, and somewhere in between, Jordan smiled. Not just the smile you wear for cameras, but the one people memorize for years. Vows were exchanged with voices that cracked in all the right places. Rings slid onto trembling fingers. There were cheers, a kiss, and the kind of joy that feels big enough to carry a lifetime. The reception was a fairy tale continuation. String lights above, champagne in hand, old songs and new laughter. Amelia danced with her father. Jordan clinked glasses with friends. The cake was cut, sweet and soft. The toasts were emotional, full of stories about childhood, love, and promises. For a while, it was perfect. And then, Jordan vanished. No announcement. No quick word. Just gone. Amelia noticed it first in the photos. He was suddenly missing from frames. Then someone asked where he was. A few minutes passed. Then a few more. 20. 30. People were still dancing. Still laughing. But Amelia wasn't. She excused herself. Quietly. No drama. Just a growing feeling that pulled at her every step. The honeymoon suite was just up the stairs. Reserved for the bride and groom. A place that was supposed to be their first memory as husband and wife. She didn't knock. There was no need. The door opened without resistance. Inside, time froze. She saw her sister first. Bella. Her veil discarded on the floor. Her skin bare, her expression unbothered. Then Jordan, no longer in his tux, no longer someone Amelia recognized. They didn't speak. They didn't flinch. It was as if they were caught doing something as casual as brushing their teeth. Amelia didn't cry. She didn't yell. She didn't even gasp. She closed the door. Slowly. Carefully. As though slamming it would shatter her completely. Downstairs, the music kept playing. Glasses clinked. Plates clattered. Somewhere, a guest laughed a little too loud. But Amelia walked through the noise like a ghost in white satin. She didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Because sometimes, the deepest pain doesn't scream. It whispers. It settles in the quiet, where it begins to bloom into something else. And though no one knew it at the time, though the night would end with sparklers and champagne flutes raised high, by morning, one of them would be gone. Forever. The sun rose with a kind of indifference the next morning. A new day, fresh and bright, as though nothing had happened. Guests stirred in their hotel rooms, still smiling from the night before. There were plans for brunch, gift openings, a lazy Sunday of celebration. But one person wasn't answering their phone. Bella. At first, no one said it out loud. Maybe she had gone for a walk. Maybe she needed air. Maybe she was just tired and turned her phone off. But as the hours passed, the mood began to shift. Eyes scanned the room. Her name whispered with rising concern. Calls went unanswered. Messages were left unread. Bella had vanished. Jordan was the first to shrug. He said he didn't know where she went. Said she probably just needed space. Maybe the wedding emotions had overwhelmed her. He said it like it meant nothing. As if losing someone overnight was normal. Amelia watched him carefully, but she said nothing. By late afternoon, Bella's parents called the police. An officer showed up with a notepad and a calm voice, asking the usual questions. When was the last time anyone saw her? What was she wearing? Did she seem upset? No one thought to mention the suite upstairs. No one but Amelia. And still, she stayed silent. Because she was watching. And waiting. It didn't take long for suspicion to fall. Jordan couldn't account for a solid block of time. There were no messages from him to Bella after the reception. No friends who saw them together. No reason to believe they'd even spoken after the cake cutting. Until the footage came in. One camera, posted near the back exit of the venue. Grainy, but clear enough. At 11:47 p.m., Bella walks out. At 11:51 p.m., Jordan follows. Neither returns. The footage cuts after midnight. 2 days passed. Then 3. The river sat quietly just outside of town, winding through old trees and silent fields. A jogger spotted something caught in the reeds. First, the phone. Then, the shoe. Then the rest. Bella's body was pulled from the water by divers that afternoon. She was still wearing the necklace Amelia had given her that morning. A small silver heart that read, "Forever Sisters." The autopsy revealed blunt force trauma to the back of the head. No sign of struggle. No defensive wounds. Whatever happened, it happened fast. And it happened by someone she trusted. Jordan was arrested within the hour. They handcuffed him in front of his colleagues. The man who designed luxury homes was now a suspect in the death of his wife's sister. Amelia didn't cry when she heard the news. She stood by the window of her childhood bedroom, the same room where she and Bella used to make up dance routines and whisper secrets under the blanket. She looked out at the yard, empty now. Quiet. The truth had finally caught up. And it had teeth. The courtroom was colder than anyone expected. Not the air conditioning, but the silence. The kind that stretches between words, the kind that swallows the room whole. Cameras lined the walls. Reporters scribbled. And there, in the defendant's chair, sat Jordan. The same man who once stood beneath an arch of roses, waiting for his bride. He wore a suit again, but it no longer fit him the same. The weight of what he had done hung from his shoulders like a shroud. Details spilled out over the course of the trial. 5 months. That's how long the affair had lasted. It began with messages that turned flirtatious. Private lunches. Lies. Bella, younger and vulnerable, convinced herself it was love. Convinced herself that Jordan would leave his fiancée, that maybe what they had was real. But every promise he made came with conditions. Hide. Wait. Be quiet. When she started to resist, things shifted. She told a friend she felt suffocated. She texted Jordan, saying she couldn't live with a lie. She was tired of secrets. Tired of hurting Amelia. That message, "We need to tell her the truth. I can't lie anymore," became the final nail in his carefully built illusion. Forensics found soil in the treads of Jordan's dress shoes, soil that matched the riverbank. Tiny flecks of pollen from wildflowers that grew only in that part of the trail. The same trail captured by a motion-triggered wildlife camera, which caught a blurry image of 2 figures in the dark. One of them never walked back. The jury didn't take long. Life without parole. No chance at appeals. No mercy. And then came Amelia. Quiet, composed, almost unrecognizable. She hadn't spoken publicly once. Not to the police. Not to the press. But that day, she stood in front of the world. "He killed the only 2 people I trusted that day," she said. "My husband and my sister. Both died before I cut the cake." No one in that courtroom looked away. After the trial, Amelia disappeared from the headlines. She sold the house first. The one Jordan had designed. The one they'd planned to raise children in. She donated half the furniture, burned the wedding dress in her mother's backyard, then left the country with a single suitcase and her grandmother's rosary. She lives quietly now, somewhere in southern Portugal. A coastal village where no one knows her name, where the sea covers the streets in salt and the nights are quiet enough for sleep. She teaches English part-time, keeps a dog, walks every morning before the sun gets too hot. She doesn't speak of that day anymore. Not to strangers. Not even to friends. But sometimes, when the tide rolls in just right, she thinks about what it means to survive. Not to forget. Never to forgive. But to keep breathing, even when the world collapses. Because that's what she did. She walked down the aisle to love. She walked away from it all in silence, and survived. What would you have done, standing in that hallway, fingers curled around a doorknob you never meant to touch, watching the 2 people you trusted most shatter the very foundation of your world? Would you have screamed? Cried? Flung the door wide open and demanded an answer to a question that had no good one? Or would you have done what Amelia did? Walk away, silent, eyes wide open, knowing the truth had just poisoned every memory you ever held dear. It's easy to say what we do when it isn't our heart splitting in real time. When it isn't our sister, our fiancé, our life turned upside down with no warning and no apology. But for Amelia, there was no script. Just a choice. And she made it. Now, here's where we turn it to you. If it were your wedding, if it were your blood, your trust, would silence have been your answer too? Was justice truly served, or did something still feel unfinished when the courtroom emptied out and the cameras turned off? Tell us. Write down there, in the comments. Don't hold back, we're listening. And if you thought this story took a turn, wait until you hear the next one. It's another tale that will leave you questioning everyone in the room. So if you're still here, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel Vic's True Crime Stories, and share it with someone who loves stories that stay with you long after they end. Because the truth? Sometimes it doesn't knock. Sometimes it kicks the door wide open.